We are live. Hello, everybody. Richard Millet. Whoa. Not good. There we go. This is the quarantine stream, the 52nd one. It's nice to be back on a Tuesday. Let us hear the ever beautiful, ever lovely, ever wonderful, ever inspirational, ever glorious, ever tuneful, ever pleasant, effervescent, ever charming, ever delightful, evergreen quarantine stream theme, shall we? Ah, lovely. Hope you're all doing okay out there. Hope you're all getting vaccinated. Remember, if you happen to be an anti-vaxxer, what I would say, and you're an anti-establishment type, what I would say to you is, if it's good enough for Jello Biafra and Jack Grisham, then it's good enough for you. Yes. It is weird to see people shit talk somebody like Jack Grisham. Very weird. It's an odd phenomenon. It's an odd time that we live in. So, excuse me. I forgot to grab something. Oh well. All right. This is a few months ago put out the new latest work. It's called Apples and Ice Swimming Together in Soapy Water. If you go to fluxlifeinc.com, you can see it. Click books and you'll see it listed in there. So this is from that book, and this is called Transformacion. The gull-winged gold-leaf ivory elevator door is open to reveal a portrait of an orchard, saying, "This wicker basket contains every memory you've ever had, so if you've got a purple number, come over, pull out a slip, and start to reminisce. Me and my sister playing parlor tricks in the back seat while Dad turns up the radio to drown us out. Then he leads down, increasing speed on the way to the dog show. Come over, and pull out another favorite. Semi-finalists in the quarterfinals of our school district's annual spelling bee, and I got here on an easy word, charisma. Afterward, we went out for ice cream cake, even though Mom wanted bagels instead. We let her hold the trophy as something of a consolation prize, quite literally or metaphorically. Transformacion! The baby blue lagoon gull wing elevator doors open to reveal a balloon crooning in a soprano profundo. Today you're in a classroom, sitting in between a magic wand and a sprinkler, behind a rhinoceros and in front of a stethoscope, ready to make toothpaste out of erasers, lipstick, and hairspray. Today you're in the classroom, and your substitute teacher is Adeline, a 102-year-old oak tree, and you're making birthday presents for her best friend. You're ready to make nylons out of eyeliner and passport pages filled with stamps of horse-shaped signatures. Transformacion! The pleated red vinyl elevator door opens to reveal a singing taxi. Today it's your birthday, and you get breakfast in bed, served on a star-shaped black and white television set, blinking lights on the pillowhead's milk on a blue and white dress. Today it's your birthday, and you get a pink and blue book with blank pages to fill with drawings of budgies and juice boxes, rainbows over razors, crisp bubblegum in between mint baseball cards. The gull-winged gold-leaf ivory elevator doors open to reveal a portrait of an orchard transplanted to a beach. Today, you're taking a surfboard out of a small bus while you're watching a girl pick up a wallet that fell out of her purse. While your head is plate glass, your arms are oars, and your hands are rafts. Today, you're making videos on the boardwalk of people roller skating while holding umbrellas or eating ice cream off towels. While your mouth is a string swimming in circles while daylight is young, and they intend to dream of visiting and they intend to dream of a visiting playa full of pleasant thing, tones rhyming ever so tinnily and wrangly in something misheard and then turned into a joke among quiet monks and either brethering ein fell. And Oh yeah, remember that. Um, Also, uh, Asia's girl group, Korean sensation Twice, made their daytime American debut, like I think 25 minutes ago. So I haven't had a chance to watch it because I'm busy doing this, but hopefully that went well for our gals. All right, this is also from the new book. It's called Windy. No, I'm sorry. This is called Investigating Mitsy. She rides around the merry-go-round wearing satin slippers, chewing pink peppercorns. Her eyes are a miracle in the way they paint names in the minds of the rain clouds. The lightning reaches out to introduce itself. The Queen of Atlantis draws filigree for the king while he's taking a bath. Bristling lips kiss the teeth of the key ring and lick ankles and math. She holds a bouquet of clarinets, wearing a lavender herringbone robe and nodding at buckets of soap. Her elbows hold her weight on a sand dune decorated with still wet seashells and teacups half filled with a treacle she pours onto tree roots. The Queen of Atlantis plans where the French and English will meet. The king eats suckling pig and excites the court over soaking his feet. This is from Citizenship. This is called Vatican Vaults. Shelves lined with caskets, ripe fruit piled up in baskets. Sugar cubes and teacups rattle as saucers are dragged across tablecloths. Outside, a crowd sits murmuring. A harmonium coughs discordantly off the spokes of a bicycle wheel, and snakeskin is carefully wrapped around palms. Two men each wear a veil, one off mauve, the other pink lady red. Gravel sits at the bottom of stained glass vials, and mink pelts are smoothed out over tiles. Three elderly spinsters raise their voices in praise, their weathered hands shaking at the sky. Gold medals tied around their waists reflect the sun directly into children's eyes. Four blind beggars fool the crowd into believing they're brothers who compete by tying knots and rope faster than any comers, the act only ending at dusk when they split the spoils. Stars roll around the moon back and forth from end to end. Clouds erase them away when each new day begins. And this is from Salt or Light. And take a wild guess what it's about. This is called The Rabbit and the Cowardly Wolf. Who cares? An angry, ingrown sore, spreading red and silently whining. The body? What body? Published excerpts. Her body, a brace of muscle spasms in her right bicep. She'd observe her pet rabbit in its cage and skip past the turn of the century print in her father's office depicting a fox hunt. And yet, just one block away, another rabbit sat in the passenger seat, horribly embarrassed as the cowardly wolf got a breathalyzer and then failed to walk in a straight line. But back to the unnamed girl. I think it might have been Amanda or Amy. When one's head is round as a bowling ball and smokes their shame and presses bare chested on saplings in the spring at dawn for an unobserved tiny tingle before the roll is called, clearly mockery is uncalled for and exoneration is at a premium. But we shall not allow for a violation of definitions, especially for one as important to this narrative as Amanda or Amy. No, 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 no. When the rabbit stepped down as the star of his own sitcom to attend to those personal issues there had been so many whispers about, the Cowardly Wolf suddenly was left without something to watch, emulate, idolize, sneak in a quick jerk during the commercials to, argue with, get enlightened by, surprise by, study, evaluate, grade, rate, review, proselytize on behalf of, display obscure knowledge of, and obviously whinged that it wasn't as good as the early years and that he would know since he was there before whoever he wasn't currently impressing. But since the no other show gave the Cowardly Wolf the flood of serotonin he craved so restlessly, he grudgingly and pragmatically chose to watch the reruns in perpetuity. And why not dress it up a little, for they could be revivals or even better, celebrations, a new institution, a part of our shared experience and ongoing mounting heritage. Clutter. Television was revoked. The Rabbit and Cowardly Wolf decided to intercept their favorite actor's private plane. As he touched down at the dullest airport you can imagine, the duo were hilarious to themselves. Is he wearing rayon? It's not like he couldn't afford Ultra Suede. After the actor greeted them with a few quick canned quips, he definitely inked two memories, and upon his departure, the Cowardly Wolf chided the Rabbit about mistaking the actor's autograph for a pictograph. As they later sat in the 50s diner, their root beers run flat, the jukebox unplugged by the owner. Who was that fighter who won a round without throwing a single punch? It wasn't Willie Pep. Which one are you? An afterthought. Welcoming back Amanda or Amy, he spends his first life as Alexander the Great's chariot. He'd get upset when his action figures didn't eat the cucumber sandwiches he'd left out overnight. He'd put down his crayons and say things like, "You're Arnold and I'm Willis." "No, you're Mr. Drummond and I'm Dudley." "Well, I'm Bruce Wayne and you're Commissioner Gordon." "No, you're Dick Grayson and I'm Edward Nygma." "No, you're wrong. I'm Ryan Sandberg and you're Leon Durham." "No, you're Keith Moreland and I'm Rick Sutcliffe." Amanda or Amy. I handed him my ovation, but it wouldn't play. Total silence. He gave it back, and I sounded like Segovia. He tried one more time, and it was like someone had pressed a mute button. "I see that you've just wandered in. Would you like to give an account of yourself?" The unclean offerings are an example of a permissive society, the long, thin membrane that seems to lead skyward. You are so well spoken, and none of us would have ever noticed. Reverse gentrification. The committee smiles, the lead lawyer holding out a pen. The Rabbit renews his contract, and his first project was a mystery called If Only You Were Innocent. Photographs, press conference, no disclosed details of the arrangement. He thanked his agent Marty Weber with a note and fruit basket. The Rabbit's people punched up the script with gems like, "Son, you're a born fact checker, right down to the letter. I'll sell my secrets because I don't care." And, of course, only dogs try to understand things. Meanwhile, the Cowardly Wolf had disappeared for 4 days to investigate a garden. He had wanted to make a biopic about himself, but he couldn't secure the rights. The Rabbit and Cowardly Wolf slumped drunkenly against the back wall of their town, with only the moonlight reflecting off their wine bottle. Neither the Herod and butcher's wife nor the laborer pounding spikes shall but feel a rigidity known in their necks, like the mechanic's racks that feels nor floats a lodestone on the banks betwixt a bell end and an alarm clock. Do you think it's wrong to contradict yourself? Seasick. Since you are no longer allowed to enjoy a glass of water, the Cowardly Wolf mumbles a roar as that goddamn kid has taken his seat on the train again, off the rails with this wretched decade. Then the remorse, the introspective post-mortem, the fashion, the architecture, the music, the media, the technology, indecisive broad gestures, sweeping changes of subject, conflating placating terminology with warm sentiment. The Cowardly Wolf appears to ignore the news feed. Deeply flawed. Archaic? Downright prehistoric. Dances over the line of self-parody so often, you start to lose the ability to tell the difference. An obvious, forced version of what he used to do so effortlessly. I really miss Amanda or Amy. The Rabbit and the Cowardly Wolf get x-rays together, paw and paw at the clinic. Nothing's broken. They just like the way their jewelry looks against their bones in the photographs. At the ballet, the view from the private box is undisturbed, and the Rabbit relaxes and holds a bucket of carrots. The Cowardly Wolf watches him gnaw. They bought tickets using pseudonyms and are wearing new suits with contrasting fedoras and little pasted on beards. In between acts, the cowardly wolf yawns, "Must they always?" which the rabbit doesn't hear, and then the lights go black. The rabbit bribed the policeman, and the cowardly wolf crouched behind a bush filming it all. And while both are smart enough to accept that this is an inherently artificial medium, they can't stand exposition disguised as dialogue, or arbitrary structural decisions, or the limitations of the budget, or when some exec wants to cast his nephew, who just needs a way to break in. Amanda or Amy, I've always had such a high opinion of you. Save your dignity. Don't call the press. Preserve the essence of drama, the command, the show that intermittently ends and begins. This is called Cheltenham Girl. Like a cloud, beautiful sound, standing before the signal. When the light shines on the ground, it reflects off the wheel. Parking lot next to the short building on the edge of the desert, she sees it's harder to be a number when you're just starting out as a visitor. Cheltenham Girl. Clouds can't create the shapes they make, holding on to any rain. Precious, temporary, holding no domain. No machines, no cell phone or computers, clicking through broken links. Credit card, social security needed. She will refuse to register. Cheltenham Girl. Every day, another wish, another mile, closer to the point where I can portray it. Until then, all I'll do is sing to her spirit, and she will return. Let's see how we're doing out there. All right, this is called Windy Sequins. Through the missing bricks, you can see a banquet table with a candelabra crooked from water-falling wax. On the other side of the missing bricks, there is a tablecloth with faintly gray claw stains left by mourning doves. Through the missing bricks, there is a banquet table, heaving with indentations from apples, persimmons, cantaloupes, and pears. On the other side of the missing bricks, there is a deer walking in the distance while a finger painting floats to the ground. Through the missing bricks, there is a banquet table with unopened telegrams and sturdy silver trays stacked up with books about the Enlightenment. On the other side of the missing bricks, there is a pebble garden placed on a tree branch next to a mortar and pestle. Through the missing bricks, there is a banquet table, lined along the bottom right edge with bowls of cold dandelion soup. Seated 45 degrees away from the banquet table is a man with a salt and pepper waxed mustache humming waltzes and complaining about the distortions of sounds and colors. 110 years old, and he doesn't know that electric blue can be beautiful too. This is it's called Canary Milk. Sweltering sun in the forecast, but it's raining right now. Retired teens nostalgic for holograms as their granddads watch rocks roll on the ground and wonder when they can be farmers in glass pods on Mars. While Amanda eats factory fresh candies and laughs jaggedly at vulgar stories. The boy who awoke in the toy aisle one evening moved more elegantly than his mother had ever seen as he picked items off a worn, well folded list before deciding he'd rather have a pet eel instead. While Amanda watches her neighbors bickering and daydreams the deleted scenes from their past. The delivery man is ready for the weekend as he ignores reports on the European heat wave, instead marveling about the new house on his route and how much it must cost each month to keep the swans fed and the water in the lagoon fresh. while Amanda feels no urgency to call back her agency and laughs at people voluntarily photographing their chores. It's called Submerging. My thoughts stop. My muscles go slack. I sink into the gray water. I rise, pick up shells, and see something inside. I see a spotlight bathed in cream, a turtle swimming slowly, and bioluminescent plankton out past the reef. I am not the follower. I have nothing to prepare for. I am not the leader. I've got no form. At this moment, I'm no one's son, except for my father's father's father. My head stays underneath. No new oxygen, but for the time being, I've got everything that I need. I'm not the follower. I've got nothing to wait for. I'm not the leader. I'm just being born. At this moment, I'm no one's son, except for my mother, the clouds, the sun, the land, the water. All is one. All is one. I have come. All is one. Open reach. All is one. To infinity. All is one. Circle soul. All is one. Bird's beak. All is one. Silver seed. All is one. We have come. We're gonna do another new one. This is called 3% Profit. Waking up to the sun-soaked whirl in the eyes of a diamond, stretching out from a full circle. I was at a recital resting on a bed of feathers and then floated to the front of the festivities. A Mercury step leaped through the lake and landed in a leafy soft meadow, my legs a blurring, winding wheel. My mom and dad hold out boxes. They walk together to an airplane, then climb up and run across the wings. But soon it's nice and quiet for me, as we can plainly see. I tied a string around an anteater, as we can plainly see. The newspaper says it's better to have metal teeth, as we can plainly see, but I would rather bathe in butter, as we can plainly see. I nicked a little bit of a hammer and nail on my way onto the helicopter. What I knew of physics sped up my entrance. Never seen the sky be so brave and wide, or thought about the joy in watermelons. And when I carefully left the step stool and went into the underground ice tunnel, I ran across a humidifier so the motor could keep my feet warm and not get harmed by frostbite. My eyes hide behind a pregnant woman's stomach while a laser rings into my ears. I try to open a case of sewing supplies, but to my surprise, the latch is bandaged shut. I breathe yellowed air and drink bubbling water and play with friends who live in the shower. I put a cold stream of thoughts in a brown paper bag and wonder where I can tap the telephone. I freeze my face in photos so I'm not recognized while I page through my scrapbooks. The bugs and the cracks decline my invitations to dance, so therefore they're unwanted. I hiss into the sink until they crawl back so that my party can stay filled with levity and not too much gravity, so I paste my Polaroids all over the walls in geometric patterns and steal some dinner from the next door neighbors as it's their fault for having given me a key. My sleeves festooned with pins and wind chimes dangle and jangle, announcing my arrival. A curl in the best nest with an arm that won't do you harm, an idol vibrating on a whirring appliance, as we can plainly see. And soon I'm ready to eat, nothing moving suddenly, as we can plainly see. And even sooner still, time to sleep. Here's to a night of pleasant dreams, as we can plainly see. All right, this is. This is called Jade. No. Yes, it is. I'm sorry. We are going to do Jade and then The Tide. They are sort of, said this before, they are something of brother and sister pieces. Um, Jade came out in Radar Grain in 2002. The Tide came out in Communism is Grand in 2009. But they were written at the same time. The 2002 is when I made Radar Grain, and poems from that period, there were a hell of a lot of them that were written, sort of created, not just Radar Grain, but Tracing the Dim Signal and Scatter and Splish and Present. So, and sort of whatever Communism is Grand is, it's not a real book. It's sort of a compilation, but not really. I don't. It's an asterisk. So, winter went without finale. One brain with seagull emeralds and a chop of jade thicker than my wrist. Glancing became the transmission, like a doorbell whistling in a veterans parade. So behind the minute hand extends more than obligation and demands more than devotion. Passion is 10,000 tiny cuts so untraceable they dye emotions without ever gracing the surface. Lightning travels celebrations and standing full face toward the stark light and thin wire sword play. Who's been saying in this bed? No one without articulation, tempo, and psychic extrapolative hysterics. At the break, I am pacing, ignorant to stillness, shattering shins, pushing flagpoles out of the fields, locking engines to mortar, and blushing with inevitable glory leave. Swimming through the rising tide, eyes, 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 eyes. God bless all of you. Momo, Geo, Diane, Mina, Nyan, Sana, Cheyoung, Sui, and Jungyeon. God bless. We love you. Once, once a yes, Eve, on the limestone magical entrance. The wind stormed around the asthma liquids and flying cost of yen. The fur was melting in an envelope, lime green irises bobbing in the water. Trying to pry through the quarantine line, topics of conversation overheard. Rusting Park, yellow shoots and chipped lacquer, birds landing on Mount Fuji. A dulcimer was plucked, floodneck papers rising and collected, Outside, crisp rings, a flickering crossing change. Numbers assigned in a fetal hotel, slow motion time to diagonal lights and backward directionals. Ceremonial silver displayed, cold crux of current torn by rain and smog filling ditches. Spear thrown into the branch, limestone posts built on the marsh. Letters sent with smeared ink, walking through masks for photographs. The motorcade wasn't noticed. Flipped cigarette, punctured wrist. The tide stretched over itself. This is from the new book. This is called Parallel Place. I live in a parallel place where the land is level, where the streets are bright in the evenings, and I know what tomorrow brings. I live in a parallel place where the wind is cold, where gray haired men sweep the bandshell and foxes sleep under church bells. I hear the lank haired women walking in the morning, their faces shaped by the sun. I live in a parallel place where there's endless electricity with very low voltage, where everyone dies of old age. I live in a parallel place where rain runs into a tunnel, where able bodied women clear the gutters and dragonflies rise in a slow motion flutter. I see the able bodied men hauling fallen branches, their faces shaded by the sun. I live in a parallel place where people speak in peace, where the foreman's spouse greets the mailman in a see through blouse. I live in a parallel place where the forest faces east, where contracts are written in invisible ink and codes are created with a wink. I see all the people breathing through the day, their faces graced by the sun. Blissful cardinals, blissful infants, blue reflections magnified 10,000 times, blue beams bouncing off aged lenses, radiant artifacts, radiant heirlooms, white sails blistered by the salty sun, white china stacked up in cupboards, shining domes, shining necklaces, green feelings balanced on a yardstick, green parchment weighted down by grapes. All right, we are going to do a really long one. So, don't do this one too often. It's only on very special occasions do we do it. So this is called Source Mission. There will be no characters, narratives, metaphors, images, symbols. Residents of an ocean liner, driven to restless flings and superficial passions as their promised approach to shore gets repeatedly suspended. Pre-adolescent alone in a church basement rifles through carelessly assembled heaps of musty paperbacks with torn covers and frayed corners. Noticing one with copious notes in the margins, scrawled hastily with a drying felt-tip pen, they folded under their jacket and return upstairs. She pressed all of her weight down onto her left elbow as she described to her social worker that she was able to physically feel her brain pulse when her instincts were interfered with. She said it was a process she developed over the course of many early hours trying to codify communication with her unseen self. A pathway. Ticking clock, rotary telephone, cake knife, porcelain ashtray. She breaks the tip off another pencil, trying to create a cipher. Previous attempts at codes and translations withdraw in her memory as she tightens her concentration. She is aware that she is unblemished in this moment. Abruptly, she starts reading the newspaper. The headlines form a confused collage about co opting the transfer of control, living in history, the past as a waiting room, a purgatory for poorly trained animals. An explorer who discovers a new land and plants their flag has no responsibility to share this news with their mother country. The explorer retains their rights to observe and stage rituals for any protracted incubation period as their studies dictate. An enforcer lists all available facts convinced their activities serve as a barrier for order. Patent purchasers pleas for transparency. An enforcer operates to deliver a verdict with no obligation to prove a link between accuracy of findings and means of understanding. An enforcer is a weaponless assassin. An enforcer insists that they are the first pioneer. After each evening rain, the drippings get preserved for either research or raw materials. Holder watches hunting videos, is inspired to buy a gun. Holder spends weekends at the firing range, sets notifications for pertinent updates, sees a man committing a hideous act and remains still. Holder watches hunting videos, becomes his twin. The enforcer, his silent partner, calls their modest home bought at public auction a mansion. The enforcer installs surveillance equipment that assures their omnipresence. Having achieved this feeling, the enforcer laughs themselves to sleep. She imagines her tongue bulging into a ripe plum with reptilian skin while she runs. Her pores can exhale for her on land or underwater. She pulls out a razor and slits holes in car windows. An explorer can extract all available data without fear of taking on the form of its source. The morning's diamond eyes glance back to the retreating night, its recollections rattling like titanium prizes, while seeing swallows hide behind clouds. Every condensed view is a pact or proposition. The ocean moves, immense and unworried, that someone will try to challenge it, to extinguish their torch and satisfy their inclinations. An unanticipated shift in climate, causing signals to dissipate into cackling static. Torrents implode into ice. Lost in the projections are the flickering attitudes and climactic dimensions. Patience. The tension lessened, the explorer striding through a thin hovering fog while receiving encrypted statistics about disseminating energy and particles and living one step left of the law. When the explorer was young, their friend killed the queen ant and laughed at the other ants running frantically around the corpse. Stunned at the realization that he was encircled by the unreachable, the explorer can disappear into outlets. Children as cheap electronics, the way to rout out was meant to present a sequence of undistinguishable mosaics, obfuscate interpretations with no deprivations or consequences, to leave leaks forming. Then, the aim was plain. Advertise yourself as an erudite upcoming sophisticate, which would be accomplished through cultivating opinions on topics such as economics, ancient civilizations, contemporary fashions, and modern literature. There was never the worry that the loose apparatuses of these perspectives could be bastardized, where the predictions and warnings could be reconciled with a record of recent events. The mandate was clear, the first clarity in many years. Everyone had to purge their assigned personas. Any inherited religion, political leanings, or deference to authority figures had to be erased. The basic inanities of grooming and greetings could be disregarded or derided. You could evade invasive questions. Replies no longer had to be forced into paragraphs or even need to be realistic if the inquisitor was not worthy of respect. A simple photograph of a landscape blurs into fractions of distortions, the faintest grain of the original imperceptible to anyone but the manipulator. A photograph enclosed in glass. The explorer rubs birch seeds against the smooth surface, thinks continuously about which pictures they would capture. Capture, then release. Unceasing propulsion toward junkyards and insectival sacks. The photograph enclosed in glass is less than one half of what the eye buries deep in the explorer's consciousness. The movies of the mind aren't enough. On the rooftops, we met at noon. We met them, no. On the rooftops, we met the moon and extended our arms. The body became sacred. Black and green heartbeats. No statues required. Cardboard panels held in place by cracking masking tape. A makeshift memorial. Spiritless cemetery. An overturned table. Garbled audio recordings and soap lather. Throwing vases from windows, hearing them shatter. Midnights in wigs, makeup, furs, and high heels. Broken storefronts. Algae-covered money flung across countertops. A crude rendering of a burning flag, cutlery knocked into the carpet, celebratory dancing in dark rooms, strangled skulls under stiff hair, inflexible thoughts cloaked as terror, a mite struggling across dried glue, writhing and boring to find what isn't solid, unopened book brought into the kitchen, hissed with suggestion, spat against the wall to wipe away a stain. On the banks of the Potomac was a temporary recreation of Speaker's Corner, the embedded fundamentals of the parent culture now vivid and confrontational, the rejoinders not at all forthcoming until a demanded stammering altered into a quieter threat of violence. The enforcer had his approved justifications. His cruelty and perplexity yearned for an explosion, a flush of his dormant proclivities. The rest of his waking hours were stretched with an arid sourness, an irritation that throbbed at the top of his cervical vertebrae. What was left of his curiosity sat like encrusted bolts behind his eyes, an angry raven hoping to plunge and peck out chunks of young tissue. Punched in the bicep until he grew uninterested. No intervention. The individual who was ambivalent about having been born affected being bored. Punched to the floor, then mauled until adults intervened. A late show everyone in the room watched. I watched. It was easy to recognize the enforcers with their crisply condescending countenance. Their banal objects, such as binders and staplers, were wielded like firearms. It was easy to avoid the obvious. The enforcer is disguised as the purest incorruptible antidote, the corrective swinging rope, the dilated pupil of absolution, walking into your sketches, sighing in your closet. Loss of legislation, films without frames, loss of restriction, language's mystery, or performance. Sound transposed on graph paper, measured, then left unobserved for organic variation. Their statements may be magnified into joyless drops, their actions may be magnified into a stilted bow, but punishments leave you immaculate if you resist food from their earth. A warehouse filled with matches meekly faces the sun. Staring in the mirror again, its lines and patches swimming endlessly moving puzzles as the potassium spots on their teeth pass like amoebas. Draws a question mark on their cheek, scours a bisected blueberry across an emery board. A fleeting infection, increasing unease, a vigorous scrubbing of the back of the head. What's left can hardly breathe on its own and offers a weak handshake to its kin. When they would talk to themselves, the etymology was uncontested and unedited, free of dread, free of the need to be understood, free of the need to be articulate. When they were heard talking to themselves, what followed were disparate ideas about automatically generated embryos, cynical ringmasters, commands that lay still, and gardens that grow wildly and overtake alleys. They were asked if they had been talking to themselves, and what followed was a jeering yet ineffectual sing-song rhyme, loudly intoning the barely coherent plot of a novel, pausing to write a letter, which was then placed into a tin canister. Asked to clarify one's deeds proved to be an impossible request, no instances to be exposed, no motive to be considered. When talking to themselves, they would often rephrase questions they overheard others asking. Are you a bigot? Are you unarmed? Are you making a comparison? Asked to clarify one's dialect proved to be an impossible request, no instances to be reenacted, no play being crafted. The view of the main yard can be seen only through a lens that works in reverse, reducing scope and making faces anonymous. a cold-nerved inversion of the first intention, procedural mockery, burying of degrees, mimic of belief that only ends when all agree that this is the all that they can see. Isolation squirms in her trachea, and it will never resolve, tenses her jaw to stay compliant. The interim professor denied himself consolation and limited his classes to male-only attendance. He slashed the syllabus to allow for his lectures on what situations were appropriate for his students to don masks and terrify each other in the darkness. Unfinished, forsaken productions, unmourned by the public, owners, and aesthetes, spilling white wine in a graveyard, a legal den of thieves. Tarnished violet brass spoons balanced on the sprained wrists of a frightened appellate judge, senator flicking at an abacus 75 miles away. The view of the main yard is populated with sagging leaves and tiny bones sticking up from the parched ground. The warden's search for language about language ends with an empty envelope in his safe. The warden's wife discontentedly displays her self-inflicted gashes as proof that her flesh will only ever be a victim of her psyche. The warden lit the effigy after forcing his way through the mob. The sheriff, who normally oversaw such gatherings, backed away, and as the fire ran rampant, people furiously threw refuse into each other's mouths. The warden's wife stared at her dog's engorged stomach while picturing its distended liver circling inside. She knew that soon she'd have to seem amused and pose for portraits. The warden's wife maintained that any state-sanctioned writings or paintings submitted for their exhibition be first personally reviewed by herself and a handful of experts. The matters they ruminated on will this offend our sponsors? Does this creation portray a positive outcome? Is this a story we are willing to tell? The exhibition itself was met with muted plaudits. Patrons noted themes of helplessness rehearsal, internalized tyranny, oppressor obsession, denunciation outbursts, and complications and conflicted diatribes. A small number of visitors noted entries that were particularly unconvincing, since they had conspicuous deficiencies in incisive brevity. List of entertainers, list of equipment, list of local ordinances, list of lighting cues, list of techniques used, list of listeners listening to each other listening. The painting hanging on the wall is sacred. It is the pardon from subjugation. It is the escape from age. Its information contains an antenna that connects spine to space. Its information can be stolen and hidden in guest bedrooms behind gilded fixtures. Its information can be frozen and examined in decontaminated, temperature-controlled vaults. Everyone gets scarred by the vocational abstinence that happens when an arrogant soul disagrees that molecules getting reconfigured into shapes of radio waves can transmit past time and place, and each entry, each submission is met with sternly inexpressive non sequiturs. Full immersion in a new atmosphere and exterior, one wider than a planet, volunteering oxygen, gold, and shelter, sweat that dissolves against the wall, a cave in a mountain, a tunnel in a white dwarf, quarries holding sunken canyons, and shipwrecks that affect the heat of lurking phantoms, and climbers blinded by their own nearsightedness. Life of a voyeur, self-invited chronicler, hushed and obedient to the minute. The unformed force of youth, fluid light beams, urgent voices unleashed while sleeping. When enforcers subject nature to inhibition and act as welcoming ventriloquists before inert dismissal and forgetfulness encroaches, the informed force of youth with the spirit for reclamation of impressions can penetrate the latent rights in cells and birth the reappearance of selves for those whose center and circles do not match. Misery is a mirage, the generic visual signifiers, well-dressed, moderately expensive automobile, shrewd career decisions give no meaningful indication of psychological affinities or ability to will oneself to traverse invisible scenery and comb the chosen artifacts. Misery is necessary, given to illusions and grand pronouncements, and the validated desire to take up arms, Principled sincerity receives an equally earnest response, though hard to hear through stifled laughter, unburdened by exploitation, scornful of discrimination. From embers, white horses returned from illness, sanctified and cured. Petition to put to the priest was damned as parody, and a dearth of elucidation around ways to differentiate between visitation and abduction finally left one to wonder if self possession was worth seeking. The tips of Grecian pottery wait to be seen in museums. Solitary sculpture standing in the gallery hallway. Music silently rests in the bell of a horn. Words whisper to each other on the page. The spine of the person without a notion turns rotted and charred and twists off, snapping away from the brain, leaving it to float a speckled, runny yolk. Solo performance for no audience on a gleaming alabaster stage that from the opera boxes seemed to be yellowing from exposure to the antique amber lighting. Suddenly, people push through the enormous heating grates and tumble through the aisles. An orgy begins. The stage itself is ignored. The point and purpose of the enforcer is in constant identification, instant and unable to wash away the components of unremarkable choices, branded into a plywood plank, then copied, distributed, and saved. The enforcer adopts the posture of a scholar to test chemical combinations as a form of comic relief, while advising spectators of behaviors to remain mindful of in case they mistakenly uncover evidence. The explorer is liquid and can rush more stealthily than a snake past its prey, softly cradling secrets while withholding no solutions. A culture of explorers winding through locks, their practices seen as obscure or nonsensical while abandoning the abuse of truth. The explorer provides an account of experiences. The enforcer prefigures the briefest number of conclusions. The explorer can learn all language forward and backward. The explorer can use all language forward and backward. The enforcer says these skills are a menace. The enforcer decries lack of methodology. The explorer knows there are no guides in ecstasy. The enforcer divides categories. The explorer is infinitely everything, innately anything. In the end, one may look at a sheet of butcher paper and say, I saw disconnected dots in random primary colors. I see palm print patterns emerge. What I saw along the way: credit cards vanish from people's hands, confessionals burst into smog, a laboratory assistant transmogrify into a silver bar, a director transmogrify into a sugar cube, dehydrated wheat become an impassive crowd, a hammer become a seductress, an omitted name lead a council, and the council leader sit beside a sword. Factory sourced protein revive wildlife, a sanctuary in its altar coated in a duet of idioms and contexts. One camera overhead, one at eye level, no panning, filters, or other special effects. The footage to only be viewed unspoiled by cuts and scratches. The shrine behind the post office filled with remnants of fertility ceremonies. Scattered gems, sapphire pins, knives pointing out from tree trunks. Stagnant water stuck to frogs and worms. The father pulled beets and carrots from the dirt. The mother fused minerals with collected metals. The father and mother recited Shakespeare from memory. She said into his shoulder, I fear missing protection. He said into her neck, I fear I say too much too quickly. Foreign correspondent pondering how to explain occurrences to viewers they'll never comprehend. Southern transplant wandering the East Coast for a tavern or pool hall that resembles the neighborhoods they were raised in. Freshmen searching for unmarked architecture off campus. Village elder sore and calloused after issuing blessings. Exhausted matador walking through a desolate stadium on unsteady legs. Teenagers murmur to each other in the back row of the school bus. The Star of David and birthday streamers, rice patties and ballpoint pens, thumbtacks and valleys. The shuddering candle, the cobalt blue plug, confusing the senses into feeling arbitrary emotions. Generous and divine initial atoms to fluctuate between mediums and restoration of ratios. The explorer who cannot travel can tear into soil or erect a tower. The explorer is able to see the bend in the end of the galaxy. Identical guards and family members decorating after an outdoor cremation. Namesake and heir quoted while exiting the governor's limousine. Child laying back on bathroom tiles, pouring warm water over their chest. Distant noise of sliding steel interrupts watching broadcast of sociopath's parole hearing. Daybreak on the curated pasture, bottles of chlorine and a row of wrenches. The teacher was upset that the pupil had contradicted their key argument, twitchily turning in bed, powerless to stop their churning cognizance. Later, the pupil apologized and added it was forced survival, survival of the motion, of the result. Blankets spread across the brush, weighted with polished mirrors. Bare branches reaching down, sundials formed by their shadows. A pair of eyes sees its reflection off the aluminum finish. Anne, Mary, and William stand in front of each other. Doors are open, documents found. Everyone chooses a room. All right. This is called Should I Go In? The silver peppermill whispers to the hammer that she's an airport. And though she never really shows anybody, I still know that she's an airport. If you stop at her coffee shop, she'll charge you extra for a plastic top. The well-water ice cubes have heard this tale told before, but she's an airport. Zebra's chewing gum can confirm the reports that she's an airport. If you take off your shoes after the security stop, she'll throw them in the air and they'll land in the baggage cart. Run down the runway into the center of the day, where the sun is pointing to the ground. Reach all the way down to touch your toes and remember a story that you'll want to pass along someday. Run down the runway into the center of the day, where the sun is pointing down to the ground. Reach all the way down to touch your toes and remember a story that you'll want to pass along someday. Cessna Tropria, Denara, Heretaf, Siam, Raf, Dulif, Hetun Raxsklats, Retam, Saya, Ednak, Iraq, Kaf, Ganinips, Evet Kelfer, Selbuam. She's an airport, and her father is a farm filled with corn stalks. Her mother is a candy factory spinning reflective baubles. She's an airport, and her father is a farm filled with corn stalks. Her mother is a candy factory spinning reflective baubles. If I could talk to you, I will some more. Just like in today's world of opinion and denunciation and admirable like in pictures and friendliness and outward inliness, maybe I'm on the thrust of that. She dreamed she was a train draped in robin's egg lace. She couldn't keep still in one place. She dreamed she was a train running on the 4th of July, filled with whipped cream to burst and streamers to fly. She dreamed she was a train running past the impound lot, and after every platform on the route, she'd whisper, I still love Phil. I always have and always will. To know him is to love him. his heart was the single most profound way of knowing him. Love you all. She was sad when they closed the gates at night. She dreamed she was a train filled with die-cast metal engines and cowboy hats, ordered by the civil rights worker's favorite daughter. She dreamed she was a train, her earrings flashing orange lights. She waved hello to the one car she'd stopped at the tiny suburban crossing, a train to get the tracks loose and a rattling. A train to get the tracks loose and rattling. Rattling tracks reminds her of those uncles and aunts talking loudly over each other at her grandmother's birthday. Rattling tracks reminds her of those uncles and aunts, people with names like Buster and Des and Josephine and Mary Ann. Wondering how long these people have known each other, how many decades, and listen to them making sounds against their dentures, trying to keep their dentures stuck in place. Listen to them arguing about baseball statistics. Listen to them arguing about what was on AM radio that morning. Listen to them arguing about the price of grapes. Listen to them arguing about which routes they took to get there that day. Rattling tracks reminds her of those uncles and aunts talking loudly over each other at her grandma's birthday. 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 Birthday!
Simulacrum. Simulacrum.
This is dedicated to Jennifer. Hope you're doing okay out there. Did you see this? Hello? Squat woman sealed in a shadow frock, trimmed in white, absence of light, selling stories from her garden that she demands are heard, but is greeted instead with the silence of the crowd's indifference. She doesn't already know that we can breathe and that we can leave. She doesn't already know that the death is largely unimportant and usually pointlessly symbolic, that it is the life that matters. Action and inspiration and life that matters. The life that matters. And the actions and inspirations that inspire the hearts and minds of others. The life that matters. She can't see that we already can walk through doors and open windows. Counterfeit profit steals the locks. Illegal son, zero as one. Selling pictures of her dinner her guards are obliged to buy, even as her art collection is vanishing until the walls have nothing left hanging. She doesn't already understand that we can perceive and that we can receive. She can't see that we can paint flowers with any of the colors that we can imagine, and we can imagine each of them. Their far and distant minds are trails best left behind. Sister to her father stops the drain under a rotting stage 6-month wage, selling reports carefully whispered in hopes her wealthy relatives will let her sign their wills first. She doesn't already know that we are her, twice as much or more, a complete verse. She can't see the red and gold bird flying right above. She can't see that we are her, twice as much or more. She can't see that she hands her keys to a steed who gallops away, away into the orange rolling hills. Orange rolling hills, orange rolling hills, orange rolling hills. This is called Rubber Buttons. Needs to be kept simmering. Let's go! My shoelaces are undone, which means someone likes me as much as I love to see a basket of swinging snowflakes. My shoelaces are undone, so I throw them next to a trunk full of styrofoam tongues, and the person who brought them yells, "Thank you!" The first person in the castle has the obvious advantage if they wish to scrape their fingernails against century-old windows. They can concentrate vacantly while being unfailingly polite and insisting their hands are made of the same sand as found outside on the beach. They know there is no joy in failure for their friends and that the fun and restoration happens once the work is done. The second person in the castle has obvious ease with boldly seizing treasure only they can see through a fizzing camera lens. They can research quietly while having no qualms about their ambition outstripping their abilities in assessing gaudy antiques. They know there is no lemon rich enough in sourness to let their tastes get challenged into swallowing insects and soiled tents. The third person in the castle has the obvious edge when turning their profile to face the east end in hopes of repairing a table leg. They can dutifully saw and sweep the dust into the bin until the bell sounds for them to begin slicing vegetables up in the kitchen. They know there is no creek deep enough to keep them from molding jellies into a series of perfectly semi-translucent wedges. I want brass buttons for my cousin because I could not count for cufflinks, they counted for me. Because I could not look for light bulbs, they looked for me. Because I could not dance for diamonds, they danced for me. They realize the chateau has the clear advantage as the place to evaluate flashy antiques. I want brass buttons for my cousin, but I make rubber buttons to wear for myself. While I sew, I look at the library and remember each of my most memorable finds. I want brass buttons for my cousin, but I make the rubber buttons I wear on my jacket. I buy the materials from the tan-toothed man who sold my mom the gold wishing box. I want brass buttons for my cousin because when I preach with the collar, it preaches with me. I want brass buttons for my cousin because when I move with the minnows, they move with me. They realize the chateau has the clear advantage when you're evaluating flashy antiques. Let's go! It's all right. My shoelaces are undone, so I only walk sideways and photograph a plum purple terracotta planter with a flag with a price tag sticking out of it. That's hard to know. My shoelaces are undone, which means someone likes me as much as I love wearing an apricot ascot while hearing stories about Korean camping sites. Healing. The first person in the tower can brighten their senses by energetically exchanging sunglasses and hairstyles once safely ensconced at the top. They can cheerfully sing along with anything, though they prefer Caruso and ragtime to songs they don't know. There is usually a fixed point up in the distance for them to focus on things such as a helicopter or a hawk taking off shortly after dawn. The second person in the tower can loudly shout, "How I love my girl!" which echoes back so overwhelmingly they can think that they're in a private booth. They can detect the scent of her shampoo in the wind and look down to see her looking up and running towards them. There is normally an iron staircase nailed in 40 years ago, which serves as the one modern addition to the edifice. The third person in the tower can tell endless jokes over dinner about the rabbits they saw nipping chocolate from their mother's open purses. They can wear a lei around their necks, which contrasts sharply with their pinstripe sport coat and tartan flat cap. There is always a sauna where they can fall asleep underneath a slippery painting of their father all dressed up as a captain. My shoelaces are undone. They lay underneath the warmth of the sun. This is a true depiction, recited with excellent diction. Let's go! And now I recall other memories. From walking around the castle, the humidity kept at bay, clouds letting loose only hints of rain, and vines intertwining across each other. And each new flower that blooms, another gift for the dozens of bees in love with the newness of June. It's all on top of my eyes. The curious sage in an orange and brown dashiki, standing before a statue of the stripped Christ, arms open and hovering. All on top of my eyes, lithium batteries in between her teeth. She holds a screwdriver dipped in green paint as she walks over underground cables. All on top of my eyes, in between her toes. She staves off headaches with gallons of water and sleeping when she can. All on top of my eyes. The swells of excitement are just one continued drone. Close concert of ideas, stretching fingers. You did a great job today. Devoted, seriously, all on top of my eyes. One wonder, one today. This is our last piece of the night. This is dedicated to Gio, Momo, Diane, Mina, Nyan, Sana, Sui, Jungyan, and Chaeyoung. Congratulations, girls. We're here for you. Once a blue wave sprayed gently onto the window. It remained an unfaded crescent reaching over the rooftop. Birds flew through untethered, droplets yawned in sonorous applause. The shape succumbed, giving way by matching passing movements, as when water splashes in the sky. A maypole stands unraveled while a sunfish kisses a butterfly. The fences were then a canvas, soaked tissue paper sprung over electrical wires, fragile forktails freshly shaven, as bronze tiger beetles glanced up at the heavens. Dance the night away! All right, everyone. And that is an exciting edition, another exciting edition of the quarantine stream. We hope that you've enjoyed it. By the grace of God, I will be back next week, assuming that I will. And, hope you're all doing okay out there. And let us hear the quarantine stream theme song one more time, shall we? Lovely. All right, everyone. Until next time, folks, stay safe, stay smart, and stay free, because you already are. Yes. Got that? All right. Like I said, by the grace of God, we will be back next week. All right. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye, everyone. Bye. Bye, everyone.